A virtual round of applause.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good morning. Thank you, Puan Suhaila, Dr. Suhaila, for the chairman for today. So, to all the speakers and the participants or the listener, I welcome you to this final slot or final episodes of the Planetiium International Webinar Series. This is the webinar series that we organize throughout this year, last year and this year. So this is we will focus more on empowering health empowerments to the community. As you all know, in Planetiium, we have four different which is integrated fields of the research activities, which is food security, health empowerments, biodiversity conservations, and climate change. Okay, so if we're talking about the planetary health as it is, how the evolvements of the planetary health, which is actually we are talking nowadays we are talking about the planetary health. It comes from the previously we're talking about our own health, and then when we are connecting each other in the community, we try to talk about the community health, the public health, and then when it come more into the different geography, different locations, we taking care about the global health as a whole. Okay, when we are facing with a lot of infections through the zoonotic disease from the animals, from the biodiversity, vice versa, from animals to us, from the wildlife to us, and from us to the wildlife as well. So we start to think about the One Health, how we want to tackle about that, the problems that we are facing with this for deforestation, urbanization, that actually the human made, actually the human that doing the thing for the sake of our own life. Sometimes we ignore about the importance of the ecology, the ecosystem, the biodiversity, that very essential, because if the planet is no longer there, where else that we can live? We are the ones. We cannot go to the Mars and try to build a settlement there. I don't think so. Yeah. So nowadays, when there is a lot more problems that related to the climate change, related to the location, related to the disaster, the catastrophe or something that can give a very vast impact to ourselves. So we start to think about the bigger rules of ours in terms of taking care about planets. Yeah. So now we're talking about planetary health. Yeah, from the individual health to the planetary health. Next. Okay, if we look into the current status of planetary boundaries, previously in 2015, we are reaching the seven, I think the six of the boundaries. We assess seven boundaries, and then we reach the six of them. And then now when we assess all the nines boundaries, we are reaching the 7 out of 9s in 2025. This is a big indicators to us that we have to start to think. Every one of us have to start to think about the planetary health. What is our rules in each steps of the community, not just governance, but also the community as it is. All of us have to have a responsibility, have the task, to ensure that we are safe in our planets. Yeah. So that's why we have this institute, which is, we call it planetary survival for sustainable well-being. Some people say, why you say planetary survival first? For the sake of sustainable well-being. It should be like sustainable well-being first to ensure the planetary health. But we have to think differently. We have to think the other way around. Like we have to ensure that our planet is okay, is good, is safe for us first. Then we will get the better life. Yeah, that's the things. That's what we are doing in the Planetiums. Next. Okay, if I want to round out about the international webinars that we have already conducted. So firstly, we have done the in terms of the food security, so rethinking our food security. And then second, we are doing on we have done the conservation, biodiversity conservation webinar, which is Guardian to Nature. And then the third one related to the climate change, tackling climate change, building a sustainable tomorrow. So this is the last one. We focus on health empowerment. So I hope that after this, we can have more discussion, more forums and webinar related to the planetary health. So for now on, I hope that you will enjoy this one-day seminar. And then at the end of the day, at the end of this session by today, I will touch a bit more about the towards producing regional consortium of planetary health. So by then, I don't want to go further. I would happy to listen to the next sessions. So hopefully you enjoy all this kind of thing. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah. Thank you very much, Professor Lokman, for setting the tone for today's meaningful exchange of knowledge. I hope everyone is excited for today's webinar as we are about to start. So we will firstly hear the presentation from each speaker. Then we will proceed with the question and answer after each speaker's presentation. Please kindly write your question in the chat box or ask the presenter directly during the Q&A session. To start us off, we will hear the presentation from Associate Professor Dr. Zulkhairul Naim Sidek Ahmad from University Malaysia Sabah. Dr. Zulkhairul Naim is an Associate Professor in Global and Planetary Health and Head of the Medical Education Department at University Malaysia Sabah. His expertise spans environmental health, planetary health, and public health education, with a strong focus on climate change and health. He has led initiatives addressing heat stress, road safety, and sustainable community health interventions, particularly through innovative education modules that integrate health, safety, and sustainability principles. Actively engaged in international collaborations, Dr. Naim works at the intersection of teaching, research, and policy to advance for the healthier, safer, and more resilient societies. Dr. Zulkhairul Naim, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Suhaila. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clearly.
Okay. First of all, Assalamualaikum and warm welcome to everyone. Again, I'm Naim from University Malaysia Sabah. I'm really thrilled and fired up to be here today. And it's lovely to get connected with all of you, even via an online platform. And thanks to the organizing committee for the invitation. I really appreciate it. Actually, when the committee asked me to deliver 40 to 50 minutes of presentation, wow, for me that's quite long, and I'm not sure how I want to make sure that you will not get bored, but I'll try my best. Today, I would like to invite you to explore a topic that really close to my heart, maybe your heart as well, health equity for vulnerable population in this planetary health crisis. You know that saying, we did not inherit this earth from our ancestor, we borrow it from our children. Okay, let's keep that in mind as we journey together throughout this session. Okay. Okay. By the end of our session today, I hope you will walk away with five things: a clear sense of what planetary health means, how planetary boundary sets the limit of our survival, and how health equity is being challenged in this crisis. And I will give you a few real-world case studies that connect the dots between environment and health, and finally, how we as a community can be part of the solution, especially in our own local context, in our own backyard. The reason why I keep learning objective 1 and 2, because I think since I'm the first presenter, I think better for me to give an overview of planetary health, even though it is very basic, but it is very important, especially for those who are not really familiar with this term. I'll start by sharing my own experience. When I was young, growing up in Kelantan, the annual flood were part of our life, a rhythmic our community learned to live with and almost to celebrate. To us children, they feel like our own version of winter. When the rain poured for days and the river finally overflowed, our village transformed into a white, glistening lake. The air was thick with the smell of muddy puddle, earthy, raw, and strangely comforting, a scene that told us that it was time for us to play. We made our boats and watched them sail down the flooded street, past the banana trees and floating coconut. Our laugh echoed across the water, blending with sound of the rain on zinc roof. The world felt more magical and endless that time. But beneath that joy was another reality. My grandfather's house would have been half submerged again. I remember the adult wading through brown water, their leg covered in silt, lifting furniture onto table, trying to save family photos, prayer mats before the current took them. Their faces carries worried and resilient emotion. I was too young to name it. That contrast of our paperboat gliding over the same water that drawn our memory have never left me. What I once saw as a season of adventure, I now recognize as a symptom of imbalance. The floods were not just a natural cycle, they were a sign of deforestation, shifting monsoon, and disrupted ecosystem. Years later, as I work in public health and climate education, I understand what those childhood floods were trying to teach me. They were my first lesson in planetary health, in how human and environment well-being are inseparable. And sometimes when I smell the same muddy rain, I am remembered of the pepper boat, fragile yet determined, carrying hope across the rising water. Before we dive in, I would like offer you to take a deep breath and think about this question. When you hear about the term planetary health, what comes to your mind? How do you see the link between our environment and also our well-being? If you are comfortable, type a few words in the chat box and then I can read it for you. Okay, anyone want to type in the chat box? Yep, a healthy planets, healthy Earth. Yeah, you are right. Clean and safer environment. Sound like how to preserve the planet. Yes, because we only have like one planet. We only have one Earth. We don't have another Earth. So that's why we need to preserve our planet. We need to make sure that our planet is safe. Anyone else? Homeostasis, yeah. Interrelation between human health and how we have changed the planet. Yes, exactly. Okay, if none, maybe I can proceed with. Okay. When we talk about planetary health, I think that Prof. Lokman already mentioned just now, but planetary health look at the interconnections between human well-being and natural systems that support our life, our forests, our ocean, and our biodiversity. When these systems degrade, the burden does not fall eventually. It falls hardest on those already struggling, communities in coastal village, small farmers, stateless family. And planetary health asks us to just see justice as a part of the ecology. Here where science gives us a map, I think. In 2009, Rohan Rockstrom and his colleague introduced the planetary health boundaries framework. There are 9 critical processes that regulate the stability of this planet. Think of it like the Earth health chart. Each boundary is like a vital sign, and some are already in the red zone. Staying within this safe operating space means living in the world that remains stable, predictable, and also habitable. The framework keeps evolving. If you can see, in 2009, only 3 out of 7 boundaries were crossed. And then after 6 years, 4 out of 7 were crossed. And the 2023 update showed that we already transgressed 7 out of 9 boundaries, including climate change, biodiversity, and also freshwater use. It's like a patient whose their vital signs are dropping, and we are still debating whether to call the doctor. But here the key, it's not about in science, it's about survival with dignity. As you can see, each boundaries tell their own story. Climate change tell the fever of our planets. Biosphere integrity tell the loss of nature immune system. And the land system change tell us about deforestation rewriting the Earth's surface. And freshwater, biogeochemical flow, ocean acidification, aerosol loading, ozone depletion, novel entities like plastic and chemical. Each of those touch human us in invisible, but remember, powerful way. And then, when we talk about planetary health, it gives a lot of implication, especially when we breach the boundaries. When these boundaries breach, people will suffer. Food become less nutrition, water become unsafe, diseases, for example, malaria, dengue spread very fast, and extreme event multiple very fast as well. But here the injustice, the poorest nation bear the greatest burden. In Sabah, where I live currently, farmers face heat waves that will crop. In the Philippines, storm destroy healthcare facilities, for instance, clinic. And in Indonesia, haze met breathing a daily challenge because a lot of polluted air. And this is where planetary health meets equity. Okay, again, I would like to make a reflection based on local impact. Let's make this personal again. Can you think of an example from where you come from your region, where environmental challenge directly impact community health? Maybe it was a flood that closed a hospital, like recently in Sabah, we have a flash flood that made the hospital or healthcare facility closed, or a drought that limited clean water. These are not isolated incident for me. This is a part of the global pattern. So I want you to write in the chat box if you have anything that you want to say about the, one example or more than one example. In Sabah, currently, we have unprecedented raining. We have rain almost all the day, and then 3 or 4 days ago, we have a flash flood in many parts of Sabah. Yeah, Dr. Nurul ini. So in Brunei, we have recently suffered from 2 days no water supply due to a breakage of 16 water pipe leading to all Brunei Muara district due to continuous 2 days rain. Yeah, increased case of dengue from banjir cases. Yeah, similar thing happening in Sabah currently. That so many dengue outbreak. Yeah. Anything else that happened in your region or in your area? Deforestation to build more resort by the beach has forced the wild monkey to swarm the housing area. So I can relate myself as well. Yeah. I think last month I went back to my village in Kelantan, and then previously we cannot see monkey in my village area, but recently I can see a lot of monkey, and then they disturb as well, you know. Yeah, back to the Brunei story. Due to no water supply, some major hospital affected. Renal patients need to be transferred to other districts. Yes, there's an example of the implication because of a lot of problem happening. Okay, flood level was higher this year in my house area. Yeah, similarly happened in Sabah. You know, there are a few places where never flood happened, but because of the climate change, it's happened. Okay, I really appreciate your response. Okay, next is So now, what do you mean by health equity in this context? When we talk about health equity, it's about fairness, you know, ensuring that everyone, regardless where they live, in the rural area, in the urban area, in the mountain area, in the coastal area, their income, whether you come from B40, T20, or their legal status, whether they are stateless or whether they have IC or not, has the opportunity to be healthy, because health is for everyone. But if you can see, as natural system degrade, inequality deepens. Those least responsible for the crisis, for example, farmers, migrant, indigenous family, are paying the highest price compared to us who live in the city. And with that, I will share with you a few vulnerable population that get hit most by the planetary health crisis. Okay, let me start with the smallest voice, our children, you know. As you all know that the first 1,000 days of life from conception to age of 2 are like the foundation of a house, you know. If that foundation crack, everything built upon it, for example, health, learning, resilience, is all at risk. Now, if you can imagine the building that foundation during a storm, that's what many mother face in these climate vulnerable communities. When, for example, flood hits, the food spoil. When heat waves strike, water run dry, you know. And then when price rise, nutrition become luxury. The science is very clear. This environment shock disrupt the feeding practices, weaken our immune system, and leave scars that last a lifetime. But the emotion truth is even sharper. It is profoundly unfair. No children choose to be born in this crisis. So, when we talk about planetary health, we are not just talk about saving the planet. We are protecting children itself, you know. And then there are many things happening as well. For example, when we talk about heat wave and also feeding practices, a study showed that when a country income dropped by 10%, for example, the rate of stunting increased by 6%, and still wasting jumped by 12%. That means more children are underweight, underdeveloped, and undervalued because economy collapsed. Their parents are unable to get job, unable to go to their office. Crop failed, and like I mentioned, their parents lost their job. And this is not only about the data, it's destiny being rewrite. In Borneo, for example, in Mindanao, in Kalimantan, I have met families where children grow up small, not because their parents don't care, but because the system failed to care for them. That's what inequalities look like when geography and economy decide who thrive and who struggle. And then now imagine it's 39 degrees Celsius in your place, right? And then you are in a rural home without refrigerator, for instance. You have some rice, vegetable and milk, but milk spoil very fast and your baby refuse to feed. This is not a rare event. That is the new normal. And there is a global study led by Nguyen et al. In 2023 shows that 3 consecutive days of extreme heat can disrupt feeding practices for up to 2 weeks. And I would say it makes sense because when mothers are exhausted and water is scarce, they skip their meals, they skip feed, and nutrition suffer. So heat waves are not about heat stroke or dehydration. It's also a silent thief of nutrition. And in this moment, resilience is no more a slogan, it's a survival. Okay, now let's shift to another vulnerable population, which is a pregnant mother. Pregnancy is already a dance of a balance between hormones, hydration, temperature, and energy. But climate change throws that balance off the limit. When the air got hotter, a pregnant woman body struggled to cool down. A heart worked harder, her hydration dropped and blood also thickened, and that can mean preterm labor or even worse, stillbirth. Research shows that every 1 degree Fahrenheit increase in temperature raised the risk of preterm birth by past 5%. And during heat wave days, the risk can jump up to 60%. And if you add on air pollution to the mix, those microscopic particles that travel deep into the lung, they cross the placenta, affecting fetal growth and brain development. So, when we talk about climate crisis, we're also talking about maternal health crisis. And remember that healthy mothers mean healthy generation, and right now, both are at risk, right? And now, if you can picture this, a woman in labor in Highland Village in Sabah. It's raining heavily. The only road is flooded. The nearest clinic is 20 kilometers away. What are her odds of a safe delivery? In Nepal, for example, in Mindanao, in Indonesia, remote island, the story repeats. Geography has become destiny to all of them. Even if all these pregnant mothers able to reach a clinic, it may close due to landslide or power cut. So we end up treating location as a health determinant when it should not be. That's when I say equity, I don't mean equal service for all. It means accessible service for those who are hardest to reach. I can see this is happening now in Sabah. And then another a vulnerable population is a migrant and a stateless population. In Sabah currently, 1 out of 3 populations are migrant. I think this does not include stateless or undocumented population. If we include that, I think it will go higher. Okay. Now, we turn those who are often invisible in our system, like in our health system, stateless population, undocumented is not captured by the system. Refugee, for example, they live in what I call is a triple burden. Legal vulnerability, they don't have paper, they don't have IC, they don't have document, they don't have protection as well. Economic marginalization, they have unstable work, they have no insurance, and they are exposed to the environment, living in flood-prone or unsanitary condition, you know. And then, if I can recall, there's one flood in Sabah recently as well. Many undocumented families are turned away from emergency shelter because they cannot show identification. Because if you want to go to the shelter place, we need to show our IC and everything. Can you imagine being both homeless and invisible? What happened to them? Okay. And remember that health equities cannot stop at border, you know, and then equity that exclude is injustice. And then if I can show you one case study in Cox's Bazar refugee camp, the Rohingya crisis, you know, in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, home to nearly around 1 million Rohingya refugees, the air is so thick. Even if you go to Dhaka itself, the capital city, the air is so thick. What more, in Cox's Bazar, you know, not just the air is thick with humidity and also hope, you know, over 90% suffer from anemia, and 40% of them are malnourished. Imagine surviving a persecution only to face hunger, contaminated water, and flood in cramped camp. And then here, what I can say that the planetary health crisis meet the humanitarian crisis. And what we realize is not just about providing food or medicine, it's about restoring dignity. So when I say health equity, I'm also saying human equity, because health is not just a medical outcome, it's human right. Another group of vulnerable population is people who live in coastal community. And then now we move from campsite in Cox's Bazar to coastal area. Across Southeast Asia, community are watching the sea level rise inch by inch. And with it, their anxiety, their eco-anxiety, their depression are increased. People in this area not just losing their houses, but also they are losing their home, their identity, their memory, their safety. All of them wash away. And a study conducted in 2023 found that people living in high vulnerable coastal area reported significantly high level of depression and eco-anxiety. And this is a climate trauma. And one of my students currently looking at this coastal community in Sandakan, looking association between climate vulnerability and also anxiety and depression. We want to have a look from our local contact. And in Sabah as well, in Tawa and Sempurna, salt water intrudes into well. Because of that, many crop fields and families migrate. They live not because they want to, but because survival demand it. If they stay there, what will happen to their family, right? And every migration will reshape the social fabric, especially for women, for youth, you know. So yes, rising sea of course, will destroy infrastructure. But beyond that, they also impact our mental health. And as I often say, we can rebuild homes, but rebuilding homes takes more time. Again, Highland community also one of the vulnerable people. Up in the mountain, the problem reverse, because in the mountain, there's not so much of water, but too little. For example, in rural Nepal and Borneo Inferior, rainfall is erratic. Crop fail, livestock die, and food insecurity depend. Some villages reported over 40% of their children stunned, not because of genetic, but because of geographical location. And when monsoon rain finally arrived, they bring landslide that cut off entire valleys for a week. What happened to the pregnant woman? They cannot reach the hospital. They cannot seek the treatment. Children miss vaccination schedule. And in this place, resilience is no longer a choice anymore. It's a way for them to survive. This is why one-size-fits-all global solution is often failed because climate change is profoundly local. Okay, now I have a few slides more. Okay, so where do we go from here? The path forward lie in the context-specific solution, like I mentioned. No one size fits all. Those designed with the community, not for them. They need to design, not us to decide. Maybe we are high-functioning people, but it's not for us to decide for them. They need to decide. We need to help them. Okay, when we go to the community, we should not arrive with answer. We should not ask them to do this, to do that, to do this, to do that. But what we should do, we should arrive with a question, because people living in this crisis often already know what works, what doesn't work. They just need to support to scale it. Sometimes when you look at our current policy, how many of our policy include local contact, include local wisdom, For example, in Sabah, we might focus on flood-ready health center, like many of our healthcare facilities involved with flood. And then in the Philippines, many coastal mangrove protection. And in Indonesia, our neighbor, maybe village-based micro-insurance for farmers. And then every contact has its wisdom. And that's where real equity begins. We need to look at the root causes. Okay. Protecting, okay. One practical example is climate resilient nutrition program. Like I mentioned, the first 1,000 days of life is very important. We can do a lot of things to protect their first 1,000 days. For example, deliver food during flood or heat wave, installing solar panel, fridge in a rural clinic, train mother or healthcare practitioner on hydration, safe storage, and local alternative, and even creating community garden that provide both food and education. And we need to be creative in order for us to do all these activities. And again, let not to forget the emotional side. Empowering mother, building community confidence. Every healthy meal become a quiet act of resilience against climate injustice. And sometimes resilient tastes like a bowl of porridge we share between the neighbors. And then next is bridging gap with mobile maternal health. I'm a huge believer in mobile healthcare. If patient cannot reach clinic must reach the patient, right? Picture a solar power when driving along rural Sabah coastline, offering antenatal checkup, ultrasound, and also vaccine. You also can picture health boat travel through floodwater, bringing care to cut-off island. Add few more telemedicine, so doctor in Kota Kinabalu can guide local midwife in real time. And a local volunteer, woman who become health champion in their own village. Like in Indonesia, they call it kada. Okay, now we are not just providing healthcare, we're building trust. And here, the most beautiful part, those solutions don't just save life, they inspire dignity, because the message is very simple: you matter. Prevention beats crisis every time. That's why early warning system and climate literacy are really essential. Imagine children in school learning to track rainfall and temperature. They're turning science lesson into survival skill. That's what I'm currently doing in a few countries. We try to educate primary school students on climate change and how they can mitigate. And then if you can imagine SMS alert sent in multiple local language, evacuate now, stay hydrated, mosquito risk rising. And then imagine community gathers after each disaster to review what worked and what did not work. That what the resilient look like. Community leading, adapting, and leading is like something that we call lost and found. Like again, I would like to mention in Sabah, I initiate a youth group that already begun this program. It's changing their mindset, because when the young people see themselves as a protector to both health and also the planet, their future suddenly feel more hopeless. Okay, finally, I think I want to celebrate what I call quiet power, the traditional knowledge. The indigenous community have long practiced water management, sustainable farming, and ecosystem protection, not as a project, but as a culture. In the highland of Borneo, villagers built stone barrier along river using communal labor, a practice passed down the generation. And in the Philippines, in Mindanao, elders guide planting cycle using lunar calendar, a natural early warning system. When we include their voices in our adaptation plan and policy, we shift from charity to partnership. And then here, equity is not about giving, it's about sharing power. And then here is the truth. Sometimes the most sustainable solution are that our ancestors already know. We just have to listen, and listen again. So yes, the true health equity cannot be imposed. It must be co-created with the community through respect, participation, and shared wisdom. And then, as we close, this is my, I would say my last slide about summary and call to action. As we close, here what I hope stay with all of you. We have, I think, more than 100 participants for today. So I hope this will stay with you. The planetary crisis is real. 7 out of 9 boundaries are broken currently. And the injustice is deep, especially for the vulnerable population. The least responsible suffer the most. And our interdependence is undeniable. We cannot separate human health from planetary health. Again, like I mentioned, we only have one Earth. We don't have second Earth. So, what can we do? Integrating planetary health into education, we should educate our future generation. We should empower the community through inclusive innovation. We should advocate for equitable policy, no one-size-fits-all policy. Design local resilient intervention, because health for all cannot exist without health for the planet. Okay? You are in the room, even though we are online platform, you are in the room, in your own room. You have seen the data. You have seen the faces. You have seen the story. You know what planetary health means and what inequality looks when the system breaks. The question now is no longer why you should care. We move past that. The question is now how do we move collectively? How do we bridge discipline, generation, and border? How we turn empathy into structure? How we turn awareness into action? And how we turn despair into design? Look around you. If you are in the room with so many people, the people beside you, this is where movement begins. Change doesn't always start with a loud revolution. Sometimes it starts in the quiet conversation like this one, because all of you are quiet, and a decision to collaborate, to listen, to reimagine what have been is a warming world. I want to leave you with this. We are not helpless. We are the generation standing between what is and what could still be safe. The planet is watching, waiting to see how we choose to move. And then, with that, I thank you for being part of this room and for being part of the how.
I want to be in the room where it happens, the room where it happens. I want to be in the room. I've got to be. I've got to be. Oh, I've got to be in the room where it happens. I want to be in the room where it happens. Click, boom.
You are in the room now. You know, you understand what's happened, and then let's we collaborate together. And again, my name is Zulkhairul Naim. I'm from University Malaysia Sabah. I'm looking forward to collaborate with all of you. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Naim, for that insightful presentation. And it was so touching to see how those vulnerable groups were highly affected by this planetary health crisis. And it is very important for all of us to find the best solution on how we can help these groups and promote on how to provide the best and healthy environment for everyone in this earth. So we are now open for the Q&A from the crowd. So please raise your hand if you have any question to Dr. Naim, or you may write them down in the chat box. Okay, while waiting for the participant to ask directly if there is, so there is a question in the chat box. It's asking that, Dr. Zul, if you are given the opportunity to give recommendations to your local authority, what are the most super urgent concern that would be your top priority in ensuring health equity for vulnerable populations?
Okay. If you ask me, whenever we want to tackle the problem, we need to know the root causes. What are the root causes? We need to think systematically. And if one thing, like in Sabah currently, I'm working on the impact of climate change on nutritional status among infant and young children. Based on the study that we conducted, the main problem is because of poverty. We need to improve their livelihood in order for us to tackle the problem. And because of that, I think we need to know what are the root causes, and no one size fit all. And important for us to make sure that we need to make sure we amplify the voices of community. Currently, what we have in terms of policy, it always top-down approach. But now we should move from top-down to bottom-up. We should listen to the community. What the community need is important, is more important than what we need. So that's one of the things that I think we should empower now, because like I mentioned, many policymakers is top down. We ask them to do this, but sometimes they don't want that. They want differently. So I hope I answered that question.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Naim. And there is another comment and question. Okay, Dr. Naim, excellent presentation. Thank you very much. I think you mentioned an approach called lost and found. So can you say more about that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Lost and found. Actually, when we want to tackle certain problem, we are living in a polycrisis. We are living in a VUCA era, volatile, uncertain, complex. No one problem, one solution. One problem has so many solutions. That's why lost and found happen. Sometimes you lost, you don't know what is the best solution. And then when you wait for a while, you're able to, oh, this is the good solution. And when you try to implement that, oh, hang on, this is not the right way, and you lost again. That's what I mean by lost and found. Because we are living in a polycrisis. No one solution fit all the problems. So that's why we always tend to lost and be found. But what I want to share, we cannot lose hope. We should progress. We should innovate. We should collaborate. If not, we're unable to settle the problem.
Thank you, Dr. Naim, for the very clear explanation on the concept of lost and found. So, is there any question from the floor? You can ask it directly. Okay, Dr. Naim, there is one question from me. What is the common most critical problem that we share in the Southeast Asian countries that you think most important for now, and how can we collaborate or we work together to solve the problem?
I think I would say climate change. Yeah, everything is related to climate change. Food insecurity also relate with climate change, maternal and child health also relate with climate change. Everything we should relate with climate change. For example, in our current educational system, sometimes we are too rigid, and we talk about non-communicable disease, we only discuss about non-communicable disease. But I would say we should adapt with the current scenario. For example, non-communicable disease also influenced by climate change, because of changing climate, changing environment, it shifts the weather pattern and whatnot. So if you ask me, I would say climate change, but there's so many more, crisis that is happening now. And then in terms of collaboration, sorry, maybe can you repeat your second question in terms of collaboration?
So as we are today in the we have participants from different countries. So what is your suggestions on how we can work together? Or is there any effort that urgent that we can do now to save us all in these areas, especially the Southeast Asian?
I think it's very important for us to collaborate now. The question, to start collaborate to each other and start to with each other. Sometimes when you join the conference or a webinar, you are very excited. After finish the webinar, you lost your interest. So I think we should start doing something, creating our consortium, for example, like what we are doing after this, right? So that's, I think, a good idea way forward. It's not need to be big. We can start small, and then hopefully it will grow bigger and bigger. And then we should celebrate every effort that we do, even the effort is small. For example, we just create a WhatsApp group, for instance. We should celebrate everything that we do.
Thank you, Dr. Naim. You are totally right. Yeah, and thank you for the suggestions. So I think we have no more questions from the audience. So maybe we can proceed with the next speaker. Thank you very much, Dr. Naim, for your insightful presentation. Thank you. So now let's move on to our next presenter. Our next speaker is Associate Professor Dr. Saengduen Moonsom, who is currently a faculty staff of Faculty of Tropical Medicine, Mahidol University, and serves as coordinator of Thailand One Health University Network, Tohun, and Tohun National Coordinating Office. She holds a Bachelor Science in Medical Technology from Chiang Mai University and Master Science and PhD in Molecular Genetics and Genetic Engineering from Institute of Molecular Biosciences, Mahidol University, Thailand, with the full support from the Royal Golden Jubilee PhD Scholarship Thailand Research Fund. She was a postdoctoral research fellowship of School of Crop Production Technology, Suraneri University of Technology, Nakhon Nasashima, Thailand during 2011 until 2012. And her topic for today will be One Health Workforce Preparedness for Planetary Health and Crisis. So please welcome Dr. Saengduen.
Good morning. Yes, could you hear me well from your side?
Yes, Dr. Saengduen.
Okay, so may I share? Okay, I hope that you can see my slide in your end, right? So thank you very much for the introduction, and also thanks the organizing committee to invite me to join this symposium. And my talk today gonna be about how we prepare ourselves, prepare our workforce for the planetary health, and in case of we have the crisis, any health crisis, environmental crisis. And now, as you know, that we are facing with many crises. Among of those crises are the outbreak of infectious disease. Now we have more infectious disease, and when I joined the last section, the talk from the previous speaker, I also heard about the non-communicable disease. We are facing with many health challenge or health threat. And recently, we have the outbreak of Nipah virus, anthrax, like that. And these things are the what we call the health crisis and for the world population. In addition, right, the thing that already happened, the health issue or health problem, infectious disease that already happened now is repeat because them at the neglect tropical disease or the re-emerging infectious disease, like that. And beside the outbreak of the infectious disease, we still have the challenge about how we maintain the healthy health of the both world population and the planet, right? We have many issues in terms of the thing that we need to develop and we would like to achieve in the future in terms of sustainable development goal, like that. And more than that, we are also facing with we have very rapid urbanization. We have the demographical and social change a lot. Economic power, the whole change, the climate change, technological breakthrough, technological change, like that. But these things together make our world become more disrupt, right? And but don't worry, right? When we encounter with the challenge, right, we also have another door open for the opportunity, right? We have the chance to adapt ourselves and make us resilient for the crisis, right? And we have the chance to develop or improve the thing that we think that is not effective or good enough. And we also have the chance to design or create innovation and intervention that are feasible and effective for those challenges. Right? Besides the thing that already happened, right? So it's also predicted that we will encounter with more challenge in the next 10 years in terms of the environmental, geographical, geopolitical, and economic and societal challenge, like that. And you can see here, the thing that we gonna we will face with from the environmental part, right? That and same for the infectious disease and other livelihood crisis that they consider as something that from the societal sector, right? That and we also encounter with the socio-economic issue, right? The money or the income, the employability of the people, right? And if you look back for those challenges, you can see that at least those challenge or the problem have the factor that connected or show the interrelationship between health factor and environmental factor. Health might be animal or the human, right? So this is show the example in case of the climate change. How many health sector, human, animal, that are the factor that contribute, including socio-economic factor that contribute to climate change, and what going to be the consequence or the effect to the health of the people and also for the society, right? And if we dig into each problem, you can see that each problem also have many factors like that gonna be some factor gonna be influence and some factor gonna be the driver for those problem, right? And this factor also have both positive and negative interaction and makes the problem more dynamic and more and not stable, right? And I also heard from the previous speaker that when we facing with the problem that have many factors, and it make this problem more complex. And now this problem also very bitter. We cannot touch, and it might be very fragile, and because of complexity and dynamic of the problem, it's not easy for us to predict and know a perfect solution, right? So it's not comprehend anymore, right? So this is we call bunny era, right? And any problem or the issue that have the nature like this, that have the interconnection between the human, animal, and environment, and society, right? And this problem is not easy to control or solve, right? And we also call this as the one health issue, right? One health issue, or sometimes I call it as wicked problem. And this is the list of the wicked problem of one health issue that we are facing right now. And how we prepare ourselves, right? For me, from the 15 experience that working in the One Health network, and also assisting the government, Thai government, to do the One Health implementation. The first thing that we might need to look at is about the risk and crisis assessment, right? So when we learn from the a pandemic or the disease outbreak, when it happened, right? At the public health personnel, you know that they can divide this into several phases: pre-panic, response, recovery, and then go back to the pre-panic again, right? And during this, to make effective and good pre-panic response and recovery, right, without any a big loss like that, we need a lot of the assessment, risk assessment, right? So pre-panic, right, we need to do the assessment to ensure that the thing, that small thing, the problem, the root cause might make more problem, when we have the case, small case won't make an outbreak of those disease or more case like that. And when we respond when the problem happen, outbreak happen, we need to respond properly and also assess that our intervention or implementation going to be good enough or not for the improvement, and to ensure the very effective response, and then prepare for the recovery, right? And this is the example of when the people do the risk assessment risk assessment can do at several levels, right? For the preparedness, we might do the surveillance or the detection to look where is the origin of the problem. For the zoonotic disease, might be do the surveillance of the animal, wild animal or the domestic animal that might serve as the reservoir or the source of the disease or the pathogen, and then monitor. And once we found, we try to control at the beginning and so reduce the what we call the outbreak or the problem gonna be bigger, right? And another one risk might be considered at for the design intervention, right? So because the limited resource and the capacity of the us, right, at the national level, regional level, at global level, right, we need to do the risk assessment in terms of the level of the hazard or the severity of those problems, right? And any problem in terms of the people feeling of outrage or not, right? Or the people, if you are familiar with the risk assessment, you might consider like a hazard and level of the hazard versus the probability, right? Or the chance that those risks gonna happen. And once you define it, you have the risk level, you know that what gonna be the action, right? It can be small or big or urgent, right? So this is the risk assessment, impact of the risk assessment. When the COVID-19 pandemic happened, right, the people also do the epidemic or the pandemic assessment. And at that time, they also found that the when we have the problem like a disease outbreak or pandemic happen, it also have another issue about information, because now we know that we have the borderless or the disease without border, that we have the very good communication and interconnection between amongst the country and the continent. So the information through the offline and online can distribute very quick, right, and share very quick, and this make the problem about the infodemic risk. And once the people got the wrong information, right, or the some mis and disinformation might make the control and management of the disease outbreak or the epidemic more difficult, right? So this is now for the public health area. So they need to not only do the assessment of the disease outbreak or pandemic, but also infodemic risk, right? And that can for the information, right, risk or infodemic risk, it can divide from low to high also. And then for each levels, right, you know how to manage with the information. And for the risk or hazard assessment, you can do together in terms of the manage the risk management also. And now I just learned from the a sustainability development or the ESG, right? That and we found that now not only the risk assessment, we need to do the impact and financial assessment also to ensure that the intervention that we're gonna be sustained and gonna be have less consequence in the future. And this is also the example of risk assessment that we can do in the field of the in the environment or climate change challenge or crisis, right? That. And once we do the risk assessment already, right? So how to prepare ourselves? We need to look to the problem itself. We need to analyze, we do the system mapping or analysis in terms of what are the root cause what are the contributing factor to the problem, right? This factor can be divided into human factor, people, because human is the key, right, for everything in this world, right? Knowledge, attitude, practice, and maybe behavior also factor. Once we can define, we can decide the targeted solution and effective solution or intervention. And this need to consider also socio-environmental and economic factor that gonna be contributing or affecting to a problem. And this is the example that the people do the systemic analysis for the root cause of the problem or contributing factor and their consequence. This is the for the climate change, right? You know that the climate change is from human-made natural disaster, and also what going to be the effect to this. And once you have this system map, right? You can support, you can focus which one that you would like to target, right? Or even in this one, you analyze that what are the like a segment that contribute in the emerging of infectious zoonotic disease, right? That try to link with all the factor, right? Not only the human like a pathogen and vector itself, but also consider about the environmental factor and also the society societal factor. And it's also some kind of the people try to understand, right, what are the factors that contributing to a problem, right, for the disease that have the different driver. And here, if you know that it's from the food, the salmonellosis, right, the contribute mostly by the food contamination. So how to manage that? You just go directly to the food contamination. How to reduce that? You gonna can solve the problem properly. When I say that, when we do analyze the root cause of the problem, right? So sometimes we need to deep under the what are the hidden agenda or the factor that behind the behavior or the practice of the human, right? So and this is the we have several models that for us to understand, but all of them allow us to understand more clearer about the problem itself. Once you know the problem, every angle of the problem clearly, you can decide the intervention better, right? Once you know already, you can define what are the root cause from the human itself or workforce itself, and the from the animal or from the environment, right? And for the human or the workforce, you might look at what are the gaps in the knowledge and skill. And here you might heard a lot about lifelong skill or the survival skill like that. And once you map with the existing capacity or skill, you know that what are the gaps in this capacity, right, on the skill. And then you can design education, training, or implementation program to close the gap, and then decide intervention for other, right? This is example of the skill that are required, that need for survival in the disruptive world, right? Urgency, right? Strategic mindset, right? That or for the workforce, right? For the operation, learning agility, right? Resilience and ground optimism, right? That. And now the most important skill that required for us to not only manage the crisis but also survival in this world is are the critical thinking and problem solving skill, right? And how we uh, uh, embed or how we integrate those skills, the gap skill into the workforce, right? Normally, is the strength of the educator, right? Teacher or lecturer who know how to do that through the active and participative learning platform, including experiential learning, field-based simulation, on-the-job training, or attachment like that. And so come to the last one. When we would like to deal or to address with the crisis or the problem, right? We need action, right? And now to deal with the wicked problem of One Health issue, right? According to the quadripartite, WHO, FAO, and WHA, right? And UNEP, right? It need like a lot of it's like a collaborative effort, collaboration, coordination, and communication among different sector, different discipline, and from the human environment and the animal sector, right? That and work at different level, at the local, community, national, and regional, at the global. It's depending on the scope of the severity of the problem that you write. And another problem is now we when we try to solve the too complex, too complicated issue, it needs not only a one Superman, it needs several experts, several sectors, several countries to work together, right? So, and we need to identify stakeholder, right? And then map with the value chain role and responsibility, how they contribute into that problem solving or how to manage with those crises. And then when you know the stakeholder, right, you will understand what they need, and what you need to fulfill their need to make the collaboration more smooth and more effective, right? So in terms of the communication and coordination strategy, right? That in Thailand, how to do the One Health action and implementation, Thailand have the very good chance because from year 2016, Thailand have the MOU on the One Health implementation for the national health security that's signed by 7 ministries plus the Thai Red Cross Society, who are responsible for the crisis and emergency response. And then they also have the operational plan, national operational plan for to drive the MOU, right? And Tohun have the chance that to assist the government to identify the stakeholder, right, who are involved in the crisis or emergency response. And then here we can define at several levels and from different ministry, right? So who contribute, and then do the mapping in terms of the map of the communication and coordination among sector of those ministry. And when we have the in this case it's the rabies outbreak, and then we get the platform of the multi-sectoral coordination and risk communication for the rabies outbreak response, and then we assist the government to do due and simulation, right, and for the outbreak, and bringing the expert and the key player from relevant ministry, right, to do the coordination and communication in case of the outbreak, right? So the last few slides, I will give you that what are the example or other model that can be useful or already used for the health threat and crisis management, right? This one also during the flooding crisis in Thailand maybe years ago, Tohun, which is academic network or university network, One Health network, join hand with the Ministry of Education who supervise of the one higher education called vocational technical education. And we know that this like a student in this area, then they expert in the technical thing, right? So we join hand and let them help us to do the what we call the like a facility improvement and during the recovery phase of the flooding in Thailand. This is one, and then we come up with what gonna be the what we call model for us, a university and the vocational school, technical school to work together to do the for the flooding resilient like that, or how to respond, to prepare and recover from that. And this is the example of WHO, from WHO, how to do the infodemic and the disease management, COVID management, right? When we have the problem about the mis and disinformation, right? So, and here you can see that they have, we need to work together, right? And do the design very good risk communication and build the resilience of the community. And then finally, if you would like a sustainable strategy, you need to have the people center or community led approach to apply for, and it needs the community engagement here. And the last one may be related to in this symposium. So I would like to give example for the ecosystem-based adaptation, right, from the UN and alliance that can use for the manage of the what we call climate change consequence or the issue like that. But anyway, the take-home message for me is no perfect solution for a wicked problem or the crisis. We need maybe in some crisis it need more than one solution and need trial and error like that, and the assessment, right, or evaluation for the improvement for next round of the implementation. Those are all the things that I would like to cover in this presentation. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saengduen, for that interesting presentation. So we now can understand better on how the One Health workforce can play function in planetary health crisis. So we are now open for the Q&A from the crowd, if any. So please raise your hand or write the question in the chat box. Okay, Dr. Saengduen, there is one question from the audience. So the comment is, thank you for the presentation, Doctor. I would like to ask question, how can countries with limited resources prioritize One Health interventions when facing multiple health challenges simultaneously?
How, right? You ask about how the country that have limited resources, right, to prioritize and to implement or solve the problem, right? When we encounter with many problems, right? I think that the keyword is that you already mentioned about prioritization, right? You need to do like a prioritization first, and after you understand about the issue, right? You might compare, right? The issue that you are encounter with the relevant country, right? If you have 5 countries, like in South, for example, Southeast Asia country that have the common climate change, for example, global warming, like that. And then maybe we can put the global warming at the center, and then map that what the root cause of this one. Maybe from country A, country B, and country C, and then prioritize which like a root cause that you would like to solve, right? And what are the possible solution. And then once you got the solution already, right, you might do the prioritization in terms of the aid and impact of those solutions. And then when you do the prioritization based on aid or how easy to do that solution, you might concern about the resources limitation of each country and the capacity of the stakeholder, right? how each country can contribute, right? I think that by this way, it needs us to sit together, right? And understand the problem, the common problem together, and decide the what we call solution, and then prioritize those solutions, which one that gonna fit and applicable for the country that who are affect or benefit from that problem. I'm not sure that is that my answer hit with your question or not.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Saengduen. Okay, another question from the audience. So if you can give one advice to young generation who want to work in global health and planetary health, what would it be?
Okay. First, I think that I'm not sure that was gonna be the like a recommendation for the young, but I think that when even right now we are facing with many challenge, right? It seems to be more and more serious, but I believe that the human or the mankind, right? When we are facing with the problem, one door, I believe that one door closed, another door gonna be open, right? You just open your mind first, open your mind that to see what gonna happen, and don't be panic with this, right? And I think I won't recommend about the what we call profession and knowledge, right? That I know that the young generation, they can learn very well, right? And another thing is, as I mentioned, that at the educator and capacity building people, right? For the young generation, right? It's important, right, to practice us about the critical thinking and the what you call system thinking, right? That and it's gonna make your how you handle or dealing with a problem, small issue to big issue much more better and better, right? And all the things uh, Rome cannot make with one day, right? We need to keep practicing and try, right? And that is my recommendation for the young generation. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Saengduen, for the advice. It's also for the career planning and not just about the health issues, but that is good advice. Thank you. And another question. So thank you, Dr. Moonsom, for the inspiring presentation. My question is, how can we encourage more risk assessment and management activities to prevent NCDs?
Okay. How, right? How we encourage more risk assessment. I think that it needs a lot of the support, policy support and leadership support, or support from the leader, right? So and each country, and I understand that each country, they especially for the public health ministry or health ministry, right? So they have to handle a lot of the parity, right? Health parity, and but you might encourage them, right? Present them what gonna be the impact of the risk assessment. Once we do the risk assessment, how it can lower the cost and the resources and the timing that you are gonna spend to solve the problem, right? So maybe the what we call suggestion how to encourage the people to do that. But I think that now last year I just has the opportunity to assist WHO and Ministry of Public Health of Thailand to prepare the public health personnel from Southeast Asia, including Timor-Leste, like how to manage the disease outbreak and inform crisis, right? That and we emphasize that the first thing that we have to do is the risk assessment, right? For the epidemic assessment and the infodemic assessment, right? Maybe if you would like to do the intervention, maybe need to do the impact and the financial assessment also, right? So and but if you would like to encourage them, maybe just start from the recommendation. But is I believe that once the leader see that if we do the assessment, right, we spend a work for like a 1 day or 2 day of the workshop of the stakeholder, and it can reduce a lot of the money that we're gonna spend to for the management or deal with the consequence, right? And it's gonna have shorter or better solution. I'm sure that they're gonna like try to do the risk assessment. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Saengduen. So if there are any question from the floor? All right, before that, let me ask one question. Okay, as the planetary health is a very big issue, and it is not just only one sector to overcome to solve the problem. And in your opinion, how can different sectors, for example, the medical, the environmentalists, and also the veterinary professionals can collaborate more effectively, because it involves the problem between environment, between the animals, the human, and the zoonotic diseases. So yeah, if you have any ideas on that.
Okay, so how we work together, right? So could you repeat the question again? That
All right. So for this, for your topic today, it is about how the One Health can help in solving the planetary health issues. Okay, because the planetary health issues is not involving only one sectors, not only medical sectors, right? So as it is also involving environmentalists, the veterinary specialists. So how can this medical and medical specialists, environmentalists, and veterinary specialists can collaborate more effectively?
okay,
Yeah.
yes. One thing I think that when you have the issue, right? Select one like about the planetary issue, right? For example, climate change, right? And I mentioned that it's very important to identify the stakeholder, right? So once you the ministry or even the discipline that they have the name there at the stakeholder who might benefit or who might lost affect from that issue, right? And another thing is that when we present them the issue, you might encourage them to see what the makes them feel like this plenary issue gonna be their problem, right? Once the people aware this is my problem, they will have they will feel that they have responsibility and the ownership to do something with that, right? If you cannot make the people, the stakeholder, relevant discipline, relevant ministry feel that, okay, this is my problem. And if you don't contribute to what gonna happen with your ministry or with yourself, right? Once you see that, they will open for the collaboration. And then you can define the strategy to collaborate together, right? But for me, to make the collaboration effectively, right, you need to have some what we call joy activity for them, right? And let them contribute in that joy activity. Otherwise, if you left someone behind, right, and they don't have role and responsibility, even they don't be recognized, right? So the collaboration gonna be less effective. I hope that is gonna be answer your question.
Thank you, Dr. Saengduen. That is a very good suggestion. So we can sit together, maybe if we have chance to discuss among us, among the specialists in those areas, to find out what is the best solution for these problems. Because this problem is not just one aspect or one focus only, but it needs interdisciplinary cooperation to overcome this problem, right? Okay. If there are any more questions from the floor, please write your question here or raise your hand. You may raise your hand. If there is no more question, thank you very much, Dr. Saengduen Moonsom, for your very insightful and interesting presentation. So I hope all the participants are still in very good condition. If it is okay, so we can proceed to our next presenter. Let us invite our third speaker for this session, Associate Professor Dr. Fatimah Ahamad from Sunway University, Malaysia. So Dr. Fatimah Ahamad currently holds the position of the Chief Scientist at the Sunway Center for Planetary Health, Sunway University. She obtained her PhD in Environmental Science from University Kebangsaan Malaysia, and her primary research interest is in air quality. Her experience includes working on projects commissioned by the Department of Environment Malaysia and served as subject matter expert for the concession company Pakar Sino Transporter Sendirian Berhad, which currently runs the National Environmental Monitoring Program for the Department of Environment Malaysia. She also runs AQ Expert Solutions, an enterprise committed to facilitating the understanding of environmental data. And for your additional information, Dr. Fatimah and her team were among the strong contributors in the development of Malaysia Planetary Health Action Plan, which is now being implemented in Malaysian education system. Please welcome Dr. Fatimah.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, Dr. Fatimah.
Let me just share my screen. Are you able to see the presentation?
Yes, very clearly.
All right, thank you. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation and look forward to the discussions that we'll have during Q&A. And during the session as well, I hope we can have a bit more of an interactive session with the participants online. So my topic will be focusing more on air quality and planetary health. And the reason I put the word breathe there is because it's very rare that, we speak about the air that we breathe in, right? If we do it every day, every minute, every second, but we don't think about the quality of the air that we breathe in, right? So our conversations revolve around the weather, our conversations revolve around food, and a lot of other things. But, you don't go to your friend, have a conversation and say, hey, air quality is great today, right? Or, I breathed in such clean air when I went to the forest yesterday. We don't have those kind of conversations. It's unfortunate that when we do have these conversations, it's when there is haze or when the air quality is so poor that it starts to affect us. But at other times, very rare, if at all, we have this kind of conversations. And it's the same with media, right? Media only highlights cases when the pollution is really, really bad. So I would like to have a session where, at the end of the session where everyone goes home and, just consciously think about what about the quality of the air that we breathe in? What about the quality of the water that we drink, right? So there's a lot, that is kind of connected to air pollution itself. So I will not be able to cover every single thing related to air pollution or planetary health in that matter. The field of research is very wide, but I would like to highlight a couple of things that I hope by the end of the session, again, would give some useful tips and for the participants here, and also some potential ideas for collaboration in future. So for the issue of not talking about air pollution, right? So one of the things for the causes is the fact that we don't really see the air that we breathe in, right? The gases that we breathe in, there's no color. Unless we are experiencing severe haze, the particulates in the air is something that we don't observe as well, right? So most of these gases are colorless. They don't have any strong smell, with some exceptions. Now, if you've been to like hot springs and so on, you're probably, are familiar with the term of like, rotten egg smell. So that comes from like sulfur related gases. So the idea is the fact that if we don't notice, we forget about it, or we don't care about it, right? So how do we solve this, challenge of like making people care enough most of the time? So that's one of the questions that we try to address at the center. And I think there's a lot of researchers also working around this issue of like, how do we make people realize that, the quality of air that we breathe in is something that we need to be constantly be aware of. And we need to try to improve the quality of air that we breathe in. And it's not just a seasonal conversation that we should have. Now, for this diagram, there's a lot of details here. Some of you with the environmental science background probably have seen some of this. For those without the environmental science background or the chemistry background, just think of this in a very simple term, right? So you have gases floating around. Some of these are benign, okay, in the sense that they're not necessarily harmful to your health. There are some that are harmful to health, but once they reach certain level of concentrations, right? So beyond certain standard or certain level of concentration, you start to see physical symptoms of illnesses and so on and so forth. At the same time, we have this separation between gases and particles. Now, a lot of times you've heard of the term PM10, PM2.5. Now, a lot of people are probably already familiar with what that means, but I've also had people coming up and asking me, what does PM really mean, right? So PM really basically means particulate matter. So if you think about little, if you take a piece of paper and you start to tear it up, and you keep tearing it up until the smallest piece that you can tear off, then imagine that it can further be torn off much, 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 much smaller. And these much, much, much smaller things are floating around. So that's pretty much your particles, right? So they're basically solids that are suspended in the air, right? So these solids can be a lot of very, very different things, right? Some of it are from natural sources, like for example, in your sea breeze and so on, you see a lot of particulate matter that is from natural sources. But in urban areas, for example, the pollution actually comes from, let's say, traffic, industrial emissions, so on and so forth. Now, again, when I say that the particles are small, they're really, really, really small, right? So if you try to look at the tip of your hair, right, it's probably even hard to see that little dot, right? But imagine if you try to like break it into much, 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 much smaller portions, right? So that's how small these suspended particles are. So all of these are there in the air, and it's the concentration, it's the exposure that matters when it comes to how much we are affected. So that's one. And the other thing is also the issue of how we perceive health, right? So if I can just have like a show of hands, like a thumbs up, if when I say health, the first thing that comes to your mind is the healthcare sector. For example, doctors, hospitals, nurses, Okay, I see quite a few thumbs up. Yeah, right. So that's one way that when we think about health, right? There's also those who might think about exercise and nutrition, food, right? Diets and exercise. Can I see a show of thumbs for those who thought about exercise and diets when you thought about health? Yeah, so I see quite a number of thumbs up as well, right? So that's the other thing when it comes to pollution and health, right? We don't make the connection to the environment around us. Often we think about the healthcare sector, we think about exercising, we think about food, but most of us, right, a large number of the world population live in cities, and we are exposed to a lot of different things, right? And even those in rural areas, they are not safe from exposure either, right? Air moves around, okay? It's distributed long distances depending on what kind of chemicals that you're looking at. So for example, let's say particulate matter, right? So when you burn certain things, the easy way to think about this is that when you burn certain things, you see those like black smoke going up, right? And then eventually they kind of like disappear into the air, right? But they're not really disappearing. What has happened is that they have either gone through some sort of reaction to turn into something else, or they have just been diluted in the air. So you don't see them per se, but they are out there. So the thing is that when they're out there, again, if we don't immediately feel the effect, usually we ignore it, right? So coming back to my earlier point of the fact that people don't really connect air quality to health, that happens a lot. When we have conversations with people and so on and so forth, usually they talk about health and air pollution only during haze periods. You know, my eyes are watery, or my child has had more trips to the hospitals and so on and so forth. But very rare we think beyond those, right? So that's one. And also the other thing is that we are not given a lot of information about just how much social and environmental factors and behavioral factors impact our health outside of the medical care system, right? So if you look at the diagram on the right, if you look at impact by intervention type, right, 67% is related to environmental, social, and behavioral, as well as prevention and health promotion. So if you look at educational change, right, I think what the first speakers spoke a little bit about education for advancing planetary health. When it comes to health, usually within the health education itself, the focus is just on identifying symptoms and illness, but not so much on the underlying factors that are causing these illnesses. So this is where the perspective of the planetary health comes in. So again, we've had presenters
Ini
speaking.
akan menyebabkan dia tak lepas. Rasanya.
Sorry, looks
Apa
like
dia?
someone else is speaking.
Oh, dia baru 1 LDS. Dah ke?
I'm hearing
Belum.
background noise. Maybe the
So kalau
participants
dia
can
GDP apa
turn
jadi
off
dia kena Melayu. Kita nak yang itulah.
Okay, all right. So coming back to this, as I was saying, there was presentations on planetary health, interconnectivity, and how our actions impact the environment and eventually impact us, right? So if you look at this slide, it talks a little bit about
Ya, itu yang macam
modifying factors, underlying drivers, okay, and not just environmental changes and proximate causes. So at the end of it is where we see human health impact, right? But human health impact, usually when we think about human health impact, we either directly relate that to environmental changes, like pollution, biodiversity loss, land use change, and so on. But then there is also this connection with the proximate causes, like air quality, access to food quality, good quality food, right? Exposure to infectious disease, extreme weather events. And all of this, it is again linked to underlying drivers on our consumption, right? And this consumption is not just about what you're purchasing, it's also about how we move around, what kind of transportation systems that we use, what kind of systems that we use when we are, using energy and so on and so forth, right? So there's a lot that is related to how we choose to consume the resources around us, right? So all of this, again, are kind of like, the effect is kind of different depending on the modifying factors that we have. So earlier there was a presentation on, equity, justice, and so on. But there is also that biological factor of, when you grow up, what amount of pollution did you have exposure to, right? Or did you only get pollution exposure once you're much older, right? Your own body biology, how much can your body withstand in terms of pollution exposure, so on and so forth. There have been studies that have shown gender-based, ethnicity-based differences in biology. But again, every individual themselves are different. There's also governance issues involved, right? Wealth. And if you think about wealth and you're saying that, okay, what has wealth got to do with air pollution? But think of it in this very simple terms, right? If you have the money to purchase a good air purifier, face mask during periods of haze, right? Your exposure would be much less than someone who doesn't have access to that wealth, right? So a lot of things are interconnected within the systems that we have. So when we look at air pollution, right, it's called the silent killer for a reason. Again, a lot of the times we don't notice the impact because usually the impact is not immediate unless we are exposed to very, very high levels of toxic air pollutants, right? So usually the levels that we are exposed to are levels that are slowly impacting our health. And for those who are interested in the numbers, okay, we have over 2 million associated deaths in Southeast Asian region, over 2 million in Western Pacific region. WHO, by the way, kind of categorizes Malaysia under Western Pacific rather than Southeast Asia. So these numbers really matter, right? We don't see much news about this. And again, there is this sort of conversations as well on if we have face mask and air purifier, that solves the problem. That doesn't solve the problem because you cannot be wearing a face mask 24-hour a day. You cannot be carrying an air purifier around with you into every space that you go in, right? So the solution is not about how do you keep the air pollution going into your system. The solution is about how do you reduce air pollution. The interventions to reduce the health impact does include wearing face masks, having good air purifier systems, so on and so forth. But that's more of like trying to reduce the impact, right? But if you really want to solve the problem, we need to start thinking about how do we reduce emissions in the first place. Now, I'm going to focus a bit more on the human health part here as well. And this diagram is a diagram from an actual surgeon, right, who has done a lot of surgeries on lungs and has recorded some of these pictures. So I'm happy to share the slides. If you click on some of the links here, you can access the sources and so on. So you see that there is this picture of a healthy lung and a picture of a smoker's lung here, right? Now, what do you think the lung of someone who has been exposed to air pollution or poor air quality looks like? Can you type some of your thoughts in the chat? What do you think would the lung look like? You see like the healthy lung, pink, right? And then the smoker's lung, right? Unhealthy, inflamed. Okay, I see some chat answers there, right? So, yeah, let's see. Somewhere in between. Yep, all right. So, most of you got it right. This is what it looks like. It's worse than what you, I don't know if it's worse than what you imagine or better than what you imagine, but this is definitely not good, right? This is someone who has not smoked. And yet, this is what their lungs look like when their lungs should look like this. So this is from patients in India, by the way, yeah, right? And the surgeon who was presenting this was saying that, a couple of decades back, he did not see this. Now he is seeing this. And the age of the patients who are coming in with lung cancer is becoming younger and younger. So there are visible impacts to health. It's just that, it's not just visible to us, when we just look at people around us and so on and so forth. But our body is impacted by all of these pollutants that we are breathing in. And it's not just about the lungs. There's research that has shown that it can cause stroke, dementia, Alzheimer's, right? There is also risk of blood clot, insulin resistance. So most of your body, any part of your body that you can think of, there will be some impact from the air pollution. And one of the reasons is because, let's say, we take the example of the particulate matter, right? So the very, very small particulate matters that you breathe in, right? If it's small enough, it can go into your lungs and from your lungs into your bloodstream. So basically, you have all of these pollutants that should be outside of your body now inside of your body moving around, and they're affecting the organs in your body. Now, some of you may also hear PM10, PM2.5. Those who are familiar with the terms probably know what this means, but for those who are not familiar, particulate matter in the earlier diagram that I showed you, it could be a lot of combination of different things, right? Emissions from combustions or from natural sources and so on. So there are different things inside the particulate matter depending on where you are, what kind of emissions is being released and so on and so forth. So the way the scientists sort of like identify particulate matter is not so much as in what's inside the particulate matter, but by their size. So that's how they identify and categorize. Although there are research where, they do say, they try to look at like what's exactly inside. But the common category is PM10 and PM2.5. So PM10 is basically any particulate matter that is 10 micron diameter and below. And PM2.5 is anything that is 10 micron in diameter and below, right? So it's very, very small. So PM2.5 is much smaller than PM10. So if you read some literature or if you read some newspaper, they'll say that PM2.5 is more dangerous than PM10, precisely because the size is much smaller. It's easier to go into your bloodstream and so on. So that's kind of like the health harms of air pollution that I wanted to like highlight, but also exposure matters, right? So there is this idea that, everyone is exposed to the same air pollution. Why do some people have asthma, some don't, and so on and so forth. So that's a whole different conversation about a person's ability to withstand different types of exposures and so on and so forth. But what I want to focus here is more on slow exposure and rapid large-scale exposure, right? So in the 19th century, there's this hat making process when they used to use felt hats. The process required mercuric nitrate, right? When they want to process this felt hat, the problem is that this mercuric nitrate is also vapor form. So it's not just liquid, it's vapor form as well. And poor ventilation caused a lot of, high levels of exposure to people, right? But not high enough that they immediately, fainted or so on and so forth. It was a bit slow, and then it started to show, the symptoms started to show as tremors and a bit of behavioral change. And at first, people actually associated this with drinking too much alcohol, right? And then slowly they realized that no, this is not, because the person is drinking too much and so on. People who don't drink are having the same symptoms. So they realized it's because of the exposure of mercuric nitrate. But it took a very, very long time between accepting that, this is a pollutant to actual law saying that, we are banning mercuric nitrate. And by the time they started banning it, people were not using hats as much anyway. So the exposure reduced not just because of the regulation, but also because of the change in consumption behavior, which is why I was saying that, a lot of things are interconnected, systems are interconnected, like commerce, consumption, but also regulation, so on and so forth, right? And if you're familiar with Alice in Wonderland, the story, there is the character Mad Hatter, right? So there is some people who say that, that character is actually inspired by the Mad Hatter disease. So it's unfortunate that the people who were exposed to this mercuric nitrate did not get the intervention in time. But again, exposure was slow, and there were other illnesses, other causes that it was originally associated with. But even then, change was still slow because there was economic factors in play. Now, the other one is the Bhopal gas leak tragedy. So this was a really awful gas leak tragedy where death happened in thousands within a few days. In fact, within a few hours, a lot of people passed away because there was this leakage of methyl isocyanate from a pesticide formulation plant. And for those who survived, it was unfortunate that they still experienced respiratory issues, and some of them experienced permanent blindness. And there was also some research that showed that children were impacted more than adults because this particular gas is quite heavy. So a lot of it kind of dispersed down and then started dispersing up. So that was another, tragedy that was easily preventable, but happened. And even after many years, people were still experiencing the side effects from it. So where am I going with all of these examples, right? So right now we have air quality guidelines from the World Health Organization. So if you look at the guideline, there are different concentrations that are sort of considered as safe limits per se, right? In terms of exposure. So the idea is that if you try your best to maintain your exposure below the safe limits, then the possibility that you will be ill from air pollution will be much, much lower. Right? So a lot of governments, and I'll show an example from Malaysia as well, use this air quality guideline as a baseline for where they would like to put their air quality standards. Right? And there are slightly different recommendations for the air quality concentrations. So microgram meter cube is the concentration unit, right? So for example, for PM 2.5, it's 5 microgram per meter cube for annual average and 15 meter cube for 24-hour average. I'll come back to why the numbers differ for the different averaging time in a bit. But I also want to highlight the fact that within the guideline document, benzene is mentioned. So benzene is a gas, and where you mostly find this gas is close to petrol pumps, because benzene is an additive in petrol. So most petrol have benzene additives in it. And by WHO standards, there is no safe limit, which basically means that, your benzene concentration should be 0 at any point in time. Now, like I said, if we go near petrol stations, you will see benzene present if you take measurements. You will see much lower concentration of benzene present in the air elsewhere. But the idea is that when it comes to exposure, right, some pollutants are considered so dangerous that basically we want to try to keep them to 0 as much as possible. Though often, based on like what is being used in the manufacturing process or during emissions, you will see concentrations of some of these pollutants. Now, I'm coming back again to exposure. I talked a little bit about standards and guidelines as to what level of concentration is acceptable within different time frames. But if we think about health, we also need to think about short-term and long-term effects of pollution. Right? So, for example, someone who already has asthma, short-term effects of high spikes in pollutants will cause, their asthma to get worse, and you see this impact quite immediate. But for things like lung cancer, right, Alzheimer's, so on and so forth. So that is a much, much, much slower effect, and more often than not, it's not noticeable until the situation is really, really bad. Now, the other thing is also the fact that when it comes to the medical sector, when patients come in with symptoms, all right, the doctor will say, okay, all right, so this is an issue with the lung, for example, or this is an issue of this part of the body or that part of the body, and so on and so forth. So very rare we go back one step and say, okay, what exposure is causing this, all right? So usually that's not what medical doctors do. Those who work in clinical research do look at that, but not the medical doctors, more often than not. And also when it comes to death due to air pollution, it's not as easily attributable because we are exposed to so many different things as well, right? The water that we drink, the choices that we make when we consume nutrition, so on and so forth. But there is an exception to this. So Ella was a young girl who had asthma, and she had very severe asthma during episodes of severe air pollution, and her mother fought to try to get the court to rule that the cause of death was due to air pollution. And this was a long struggle, almost took a decade, but her mother did get that ruling. Where her death report now records that the cause of death was air pollution. But that being said, this statistic of one person passed away due to air pollution was used by those who were campaigning against ULEZ. So in London, there was this campaign for ultra low emission zones. So those who were not happy with some of the rules and regulations were saying that, well, only one person died. So why do we need to do all of this, right? So again, numbers can be manipulated and the story can or the narrative can change depending on how it is being explained to the public. So it's really important for those who are in this room today or in this like webinar today to think about, if you are generating data, so on and so forth, how are you communicating the data? What kind of narrative are you using? Is it clear enough for the public? Is it accurate? Is it factual, right? Because it's very easy for numbers to be manipulated, right? And, for certain causes. So it's important to keep track of like, what are the narratives that are being said? What kind of disinformation is being said? And try to create awareness on what is the right narrative, what is really happening, and try to create the sort of care for our health based on this science that we already have established, right? So it's we are living in an era or in a decade of very, very dynamic geopolitical differences, but that doesn't stop us from trying our best to present information in the right factual manner, but also in a manner that is easily accessible to the public. So I have, explained what is microgram per meter cube just now, because usually when I give my presentations, as I'm from an air pollution field, it's understood that it's a unit until I had someone come up to me and ask, what does microgram or, M3 means, right? Or, whatever does that mean? So I realized also that when we speak to the public, there are information that we cannot take for granted that people understand already. So that's another, I think, key takeaway that I would like to share with everyone today. Like, your work matters, and how you present your work really matters as well. Now, going on to the next one. So I spoke a little bit about the WHO air quality guideline, and I said a little bit about the different concentrations at different time periods and so on and so forth. So I'll come back to that in a bit, as I promised. But before we go into that, what's the difference between a guideline and standard? Can someone share with me in the chat? What do you think is the difference between an air quality guideline and an air quality standard? Okay, I see some answers. Guidelines provide more specific directions for action. Okay. Anyone else? Not so sure? All right. So, and that's perfectly fine, right? Because usually we hear these terms, but, we are not told about, like, what does that really mean for us, right? I see another answer there. Standard is the cutoff point for safe level. All right. So there's a mixture of answers here that are partially correct. So guideline does give you direction for action, right? And guideline also kind of provides you like a cutoff point for safe levels. But the difference between guideline and standard really is in terms of enforcement. When it is a guideline, it is not legally, or there is no legal implications to it. It is just a guide. Okay, this should be the limit that you follow. Whether you follow or not, no one is gonna come after you. But when it is a standard, it requires enforcement, which means that, are we doing enough to make sure that we are not going above the standard that is there? And when we do go above the standard, are we doing enough to make sure that it will come back down, right? So standard has accountability to it. It has an enforcement part to it. So hope that's a bit clear in terms of like the difference between a guideline and a standard when it comes to air quality guidelines and standards. So when you look at WHO, it's a guideline for countries. So WHO will not chase after the countries to say like, why not following or impose fines to the countries and so on. But when a country imposes standards, they usually will have a department that will be monitoring the air pollutants. And when there are, times when it exceeds, they will try their best. If it's a localized pollutants, they will go, if they can find the source, they will go and fine the polluters, right? If it's regional hails, again, that is like a whole different conversation together in terms of like responsibility between countries and the transboundary haze agreement, so on and so forth. But if it's localized, it's within the boundary of the country. So usually the country has, rules, regulations, as well as enforcement officers to carry out these rules and regulations. Now, when it comes to time averages, right? So if you look at this is recommended over a 24-hour time period. There is also the annual averages. So basically what it means, all right, is that they take the hourly average, okay? So within 1 hour, all right, usually most instruments will take readings like every few seconds or every few minutes, and then you average all of these readings into an hour. Or if here in the case of ozone, it's an 8-hour time period. Okay, so they take 8-hour averages every 8 hour, right? So I will not go into the detail of how these are calculated, so on and so forth, when it comes to 8-hour, 24-hour, and so on. But just bear in mind that when it comes to averages that we look at, this hourly and yearly averages are then used by governments to kind of like come up with their own standards. So I'm giving the example of Malaysia here. So I know there's people from other countries like Thailand, I think Brunei, so on and so forth, present in the room. So your country might have slightly different values that they follow. So in Malaysia, what they had was this sort of like interim standards to follow by 2015, 2018, by 2020. And if you look at it, like it's reducing, right? So meaning that the standard is becoming more stringent, which is great. But if you are wondering why within 1 year it's 40, but within a 24-hour period it's 100, we come back to that conversation about exposure. Okay, so if you are exposed for 1 hour, just 1 hour, right? No more than an hour, okay? So there is a spike in the concentration for just 1 hour. So it can go up to 100. But if we are looking at 1 year, every day, every hour of the year, you are exposed to the pollutant, then the annual average, right? That average that you're exposed to must be 40 and below, right? So by Malaysian standards. Now, the reason being that if you have much shorter time of exposure, your body can deal with a bit more compared to if you are exposed to something every single day, then there's this cumulative impact to your body, right? So by that logic, the concentration that you are exposed to every day, every hour of the year must be much, much lower than if you are experiencing some sudden spike. Your body can still like, okay, all right, this is just a short spike, and then it kind of goes down, right? So that's why you will see slightly different numbers when we look at the different hourly averaging periods. And this pattern you will see across different countries, so on and so forth. And I've said within WHO as well, it's the same. If you look at the hourly averages and the annual averages, you will see that the annual average values are much, much lower than the hourly or 24-hour averages, right? So that's one of the things. So even if you look at like 24-hour and 1 hour here, for example, this example of nitrogen dioxide gas, all right? So you have 1 hour, 24-hour. So 24-hour, you need to be exposed much less than if you have a sudden spike of 280. So the idea is, your body can still deal with a bit more as long as it's just a very, very, very short-term exposure. So hopefully that's clear, but I'll be happy to talk a little bit more about this during Q&A if that's helpful. So that's one. The other one is also air pollution index and air quality standard. And here, the idea is that when it comes to air quality standard, you are looking at the concentration of the pollutants. But when you look at air pollution index or air quality index, you are not looking at the concentration you are exposed to, but someone has already made a calculation to show in numerical value whether you have good, bad, or or unhealthy air quality. So how is that calculation done? It's slightly different for different countries. Okay. And here I'm giving a bit of an example from Malaysia. Again, this is not the actual formula, but this is just so that you know that, we have standards for, let's say, sulfur dioxide 1 hour. We have standards for NO2 1 hour. And I've said that once it's a standard, you need to measure, you need to monitor, and you need to enforce the standards, right? So as part of that monitoring, our government in Malaysia monitors all of these pollutants, and once they start monitoring, some of these will go into the calculations for identifying what's the index value related to each of these pollutants. And within an hour, let's say at between 2 to 3 o'clock, so you have all of these values, and the value that is highest goes into the IPU, or the air pollution index. Here in Malaysia, we call it the air pollution index. Some countries call it air quality index. So basically, the idea of an air pollution index is that it already gives you a bit of a value on how it impacts your health, right? So rather than, okay, it's concentration, 5 microgram, 10 microgram, what does that even mean to us, right? So an index gives you a numerical value that's more intuitive, in the sense that, okay, if it's good, okay, great, I can do anything I want. If it's moderate, for people who are very sensitive to air pollutants, they need to be a bit more careful when they do activity outdoors and so on, right? Or if it reaches unhealthy level, right? Reduce, prolong, or heavy activities. You don't want to breathe heavily, so on and so forth. So that's the difference between an air quality guideline / or standard compared to an air pollution index. So the index value is not so much as how much pollutant there is, one specific pollutant concentration there is, but what level of quality is the air in relation to our health, right? So some of these numbers, again, are calculated slightly differently by different countries. So you might see some slight differences in the values of the index. Now, coming back to planetary health and air quality, right? So I've talked a lot about human health and air quality, impact to us directly, but it's not just this is not a siloed thing, right? Air quality can also impact food quality, for example. So even within these categories, it's not just a single sort of factor. Everything is interconnected. So if you think about planetary health, the idea again is that, it's about looking at systems and trying to look at solutions from a systems perspective. So coming back to air pollution, and why am I talking about food quality? It does reduce your food quality, right? For example, photosynthetic efficiency is decreased. All right, so this is a study done on corn. So here in Malaysia, there was a study done on rice crop, right? So there was significant, okay, and when I say significant, I mean that it's observable, the change in terms of the crop yield when you have high concentration of ozone. So basically, your crop yields are reducing because of air pollution. The example I've shared here is more on acid rain. But like I said, It's not just limited to one particular thing. It's across the different pollutants. They are causing different impacts to our crops. And an indirect way, how it impacts our crop is also that it disrupts how insects communicate, right? So they cannot find the flowers to pollinate. And when you have less pollination, again, you have less biodiversity, you have less crop yield, so on and so forth, because insects are an important part of the system when it comes to pollination, right? So if you disrupt insects' ability to communicate, you are basically disrupting your food systems as well. So that's kind of like, how one single thing can affect a lot of very, very different things, right? So someone earlier spoke about there are multiple solutions. There are also multiple problems that we need to find solutions for. So climate change, it's there's always this talk about climate change and air pollution and so on and so forth. But the one key takeaway I want you to take from this particular diagram is that when it comes to climate change, there is a feedback loop that is happening. Some of the air pollutants themselves are impacting climate change, while at the same time, climate change is also causing more air pollution. So I'll give an example of ozone, right? So ozone is a gaseous air pollutant. Now, when you think about ozone, how many of you thought about ozone hole when you think about ozone? Can I see a thumbs up? Yeah, all right. So I see a couple of people think about ozone hole, right? So usually what we are trying to do is that we are trying to reduce the ozone hole, right? So the idea is that ozone is good. And that's true. Ozone is good as long as it's in the stratosphere, like 15 kilometers above us, all right? In the air, all right? 15, 30 kilometers above us. But if it is here near ground where we are breathing in air, ozone is really, really bad because it is a highly reactive oxidant. In water management, some people actually use ozone to help purify water because it's powerful enough to kill bacteria. So that's how strong an oxidant ozone is, right? It can cause tires, cracking of the polymers in tires, car tires. So imagine all of this is something that we breathe in, right? So that's really bad. So ozone is special because it's formed not directly when you have emission from, let's say, traffic or combustion. It is formed from the reactions of oxides of nitrogen and volatile organic compounds in the presence of sunlight. So during daytime, noon, that's when you see ozone highest in most cities. And ozone is a greenhouse gas. But at the same time, when you have climate change, the reactions that form ozone become much faster. So you get a lot more ozone as you have, higher average temperatures globally or in your local area. And like I said, ozone itself is a greenhouse gas. So it's like a double whammy, right? So there's a lot of feedback mechanisms that is happening in terms of the chemistry, in terms of the air pollution, in terms of climate change, and so on and so forth. So again, this is why the emphasis is on looking at things from a systems approach and not just a single cause impact factor. So we've talked a lot about all the issues, challenges, and so on. But I would like to end a bit more on what can we do rather than what are the problems, right? So Before I go into that though, I just want to very quickly say that, there are different ways how pollutants are categorized. So sometimes it's called toxic, sometimes it's called hazardous. There's a new term that you hear now, forever chemicals, if you're familiar with the term. So it's basically substances that are pretty much generated for commercial industrial purposes, but they pretty much stay in the environment for like the longest of times. There are those that are carcinogenic, those who cause us cancer. So benzene is an example, which is why WHO has that standard of like no benzene concentrations at all, if possible. But they are also typically characterized by impact to health, source of pollution, right? So this source is what I want to talk a little bit about. So there's a lot of, talk. I think you're probably familiar with, don't drive cars or use public transport and so on and so forth. But the idea basically comes down to reducing combustion. And combustion produces primary pollutants, and there is also secondary pollutants that are formed from chemical reactions. So particulate matter, for example, can be both primary and secondary pollutant. But just remember that the key takeaway that is from here is that commercial production of materials also causes pollution, and it's not just about combustion, right? Agriculture, what you use, can also cause pollution. So there's a lot of sources that, you may not think about, but really matters. And in the case of indoor air pollutants, whatever things that you use at home, some of them might be releasing volatile organic compounds that might be dangerous for you. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So I talked a little bit about ozone earlier, so I'm going to skip this part about good and bad ozone. But in terms of like the broader perspective of health itself, within health systems, there are already suggestions on like how do we bring in air pollutant exposure to health interventions in hospitals directly or within schools and stuff. So like I said, I'm happy to share this slides, and if you can click on this article, you'll see this policy roadmap for health systems for tackling air pollution. So 2 examples I've highlighted here is school-based monitoring. So basically you monitor and create awareness so that the students know what to do and not to do. And the other one that's pretty interesting is that there's this hospital in UK that has integrated real-time air quality monitoring to assess sort of like interventions for their patients, right? So there are things that are already being done out there. There's a lot of really great community initiatives, bilateral and multilateral collaborations between countries, so on and so forth. So I will not go into the details of those, but more on like what you can do, right? So as a start, you can start looking at what's the value of the air pollution index or air quality index in your place. So I've given an example for Malaysia. So there's another one, which is the IQ Air website. Your country may have its own sort of air pollution index value that's being released hourly. I know Thailand has for sure. But at the same time, if you start comparing between the different websites, you may see slight differences in the number, which is why I went through that slide of explaining that, these are calculations that you derive from concentrations. So where you get the concentration value, how that value is obtained is one thing. The other thing is how is the calculations made. So just be careful when you do these comparisons. Don't look at it and say that, all the values are different, so none of it is right. That's not true, right? So it's just that the way the calculation is done is slightly different. So some may switch. I mean, the numbers may switch faster than the others. to show unhealthy values, while some might be a bit slower to show that switch. So I would recommend still looking at some of these values, but just remember that when you are comparing, you need to be very careful when comparing. Like apples and oranges is the common thing that we think of, but there is also apple to apple comparison that you need to think of, right? Because the way, like I said, the way some of the calculations are done are slightly different between different countries or different websites. So that's where the differing numbers come from. Now, I talked a little bit about air pollution indoors as well. So a couple of years back, I don't see it now anymore. In Malaysia, you could see, these ads for low VOC paint and so on and so forth, right? So it became like a company brand to say that, my paint has less VOC, so on and so forth. So basically, sometimes you can also leverage this kind of things to make industry change, all right? To say that, going the healthier, less polluting way is better. So that's one, okay? Identifying items that might have less emissions. And also, it's good to allow air circulation from outdoors. So usually, like if you're away for work, the whole day, the whole family work and school, when you come back, open doors, allow the ambient air from outside to come in, indoor, and so on and so forth, right? Especially if you have just bought a lot of new furniture. I think you're probably familiar if you go to a new building and so on, there's that very strong pungent smell that's uncomfortable, and some people are more sensitive than others to it. So basically, airing out helps. Even after a long period of time, you still have some of these chemicals being released into the air. It's just that it's not as noticeable. Now, what are we doing at the Sunway Center for Planetary Health? So we have been working on, like, for example, I've been working on this no idling campaign as part of the research to reduce, the probability of students staying in their car and letting their engines run early morning. So they come in early morning, park their car and, stay in the car for an hour with the engine running, waiting for their class. Because they wanted to skip the traffic, or because they just wanted to book a parking slot and so on. So that's one of the things that we've done, like on a very, very micro scale. Another thing we've done is that we've started this series of training for journalists and media professionals, and it's on climate and health, and some of the topics include air pollution. We had last year had a Planetary Health Integration short course for the Ministry of Higher Education, and there are talks on having an extension of this series this year through the training arm of Ministry of Higher Education here in Malaysia. But mostly, we also work on trying to push for policy. I think there was a mention of the National Planetary Health Action Plan, where our executive director is the lead for one of the pillars, but she has also been actively pushing for a planetary health action plan itself from the get-go. And also, for example, I work in the field of air pollution. The example I shared just now on the initiatives taken by hospitals, I was asked to give my feedback on that particular report, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. If you don't work in the space of air pollution, you work in terms of food, nutrition, you work in terms of air, water, or, arts. There's a lot of different ways where we can bring in that understanding of things are interconnected, and that we need to be aware of our emission. We need to be aware of our consumption. For example, at the center, we work very closely with the School of Arts, where we bring in the different ways to bring in planetary health conversations to students through arts and culture. So the levels that we focus on at the center is more on like the governance side, the communication side, and the knowledge side, where the knowledge side is more on the science and research, but also in terms of communications. I highlighted a little bit about, how important it is to be able to communicate your results, your data, your story to the public. Right, so I'm going to stop here. I think I took a little bit more time than I should, but thank you so much for paying attention, for being interactive, and I'm gonna end with this cute little comic that looks funny, but it's the sad reality of challenges when it comes to air pollution, because a lot of times it's a borderless issue, and when it comes to transboundary emissions, and how do we keep air pollution low on a global scale. There's a lot of challenges there, but let's start at local scale, which matters too, because what you emit here, some of them will be traveling long hundreds of kilometer distances to somewhere else too. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fatimah, for that detailed and interesting presentation. We now understand that air quality and planetary health cannot be separated, and hopefully that the air quality can be maintained at a healthy and safe level for all of us over the globe, because air is the one important element that we share among us worldwide. So we are now open for the question and answer session. If you have any question you want us to directly, you can raise your hand or write your comment in the chat box. Okay, Dr. Fatimah, there is one question from the audience. So the comment is, excellent presentation, doctor. If you were to identify behaviors at the community level that pollute the air and could be changed if people knew the hazards and were motivated to change, and what would those behaviors be? And I am thinking of burning plastic garbage, for example.
Yeah, so thank you for that question. Your example is already a great answer, all right? Burning plastic garbage, burning any garbage for that matter, right? Because especially if you are in an area where there is a facility for waste disposal, right? So burning is one, and I think the one that you usually hear is about taking public transport. But the issue with taking public transport is that what's not in the conversation is accessibility, right? For example, if let's say you want to take public transport, you need to first get to the train station, for example, right? And then from the station to your workspace. And sometimes there is not enough safe space, or a safe area where you can walk. It's not covered. For example, we have very, our weather can be very unpredictable, so on and so forth. So safety is an issue when it comes to accessibility to public transport. So at community level, that's not something that you can change directly, but you can ask your reps, local representative or councils to start, thinking about this when there's planning and so on and so forth. So the government sometimes opens certain, options for providing your feedback on these kind of things. So I think the more we talk about it, the more it becomes an issue, the more likely a change will happen. The other thing is also things like, as I mentioned, like no idling. We idle a lot, if you notice. Like you go to a shopping mall, instead of parking, you just stop by the side. You could turn off the engine, but you don't. We only have the conversation when it's really unfortunate that some people has passed away because of carbon monoxide poisoning, right? But it goes beyond just carbon monoxide poisoning when you're idling in your car, right? You are releasing a lot of pollutants into the air, right? But it's just a common habit that we have. I think it's not just in Malaysia, in a lot of countries where people drive and they just drop by at some site, and in while waiting they just keep idling. So that's one of the things. The other thing, like I said, is that if you take one more step further, it's not just about the direct emissions, right? It's also about the production of materials. A lot of emissions happen when materials are being produced. So if we reduce our consumption of materials, to what we need rather than what we like all the time, that would also be very helpful in reducing pollution at like community, personal behavior level. And hope that kind of like answers some of it. We can go into more discussions. Be happy to, have like offline conversation on this, but that's some example.
Thank you, Dr. Fatimah, for the answer. And there is the other question is keep coming. So, but I will take another, maybe, yeah, we can try to see the time. But the other question is, thank you, Doctor, for an eye-opening discussion. Considering your topic today, I wonder why we are not angry enough on the harmful effects of smoking, especially since it is scientifically proven that the second-hand smokers suffers the most, also taking into account on the rapid growth of vaping amongst the society from as young as the school kids.
So I have a slightly different view on this. I don't think it's not that we are angry enough. I think that there are enough people being angry at it. They're not happy with it. But as a society, I think we don't speak out, right? You see someone smoking, you usually like give the side eye, or like you're just unhappy inside, you're angry inside, but that anger is not expressed in a way that, I mean, I'm not saying that, you can go and scold a person, but I'm saying that, it's not expressed in a way that we make sufficient noise that there are regulatory changes, or there are changes in behavior because people just feel embarrassed to do it, right? If it's like, for the longest time, the tobacco industry used smoking is great, smoking is amazing. You have all this, like model smoking and stuff. But then when can we have a society that have these conversations of smoking as in, wow, that person is smoking, you, kind of thing. So there is this level of acceptance still. It's not, like I said, to me, it's not so much as there's not enough anger, but there's just not enough conversations to create change, right? So you have this like internal anger, and you're just unhappy about it, but what are we doing about it, right? In what positive way? So again, like I said, I'm not saying like, to go and scold people, but you can always just give a reminder, or you can, just have conversations within your circle of influence of like, okay, this is really bad, and so on. So when we have certain gatherings, so on and so forth, no smoking is allowed, even if you go out to smoke somewhere, right? So basically just no smoking, for example. So again, I don't know how helpful that is. It's just my kind of like personal point of view for on that particular question. But regulations help because it gives you a bit of a leverage to say like, excuse me, I'm not comfortable with this, and we have regulations saying that you cannot smoke here.
All right, maybe another one last question I will pick from the chat. Okay, there's a comment and question. Thank you, Dr. Fatimah, for your great sharing. Everyone knows that air is essential for life, yet air pollution often receives less public attention compared to issues like plastic waste and climate change. So why do you think this happened? Are they currently under campaigns in Malaysia that focus on raising awareness about the air quality?
So I think there are like small scale campaigns, but not as much. And like I said, we only have conversations about bad air, like for example, when there is haze, right? Thailand has regulations where I think in the city center of Bangkok, the government officers don't have to go to work during, very severe air pollution days and so on. Again, that's more of an intervention rather than reduction of the emission itself. Although, that transportation they take and so on reduces the emission itself, right? But the underlying bigger cause is still there. That's helpful. But like I said, it's something that you don't really observe. You don't get sick from it immediately. So I think we have so many other issues that it's just, like I said, it's just not part of the conversation. So like I said from the very beginning, I hope the key takeaway from this is also that, we start having those conversations with the people around us, and think a bit more, and it might just expand to a campaign, somewhere, that you might have within your community, for example.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Fatimah, and to those who ask questions and comments. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank all our panelists, Dr. Zulkhairul Naim, Dr. Saengduen Moonsom, and Dr. Fatimah Ahamad for their valuable insights, and our audience for their engagement. Let us continue translating knowledge into action, collaborations into solutions, and regional challenges into global leaderships in planetary health. So before we end this session, let us take some time to make some memory, maybe to take some pictures together with the panelists and participants. If it is possible for you, please turn on your camera. Thank you for your cooperation. Okay, as we have quite a large number of participants, we will make it in a few stages. So I will take a few pictures. Okay. Okay, 1, 2, 3. 1. Next. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3. It's all good? Okay, thank you everyone for your cooperation. And after this, we will have another forum session involving 3 representative countries in Southeast Asia, which are Indonesia, Brunei, and Malaysia. And the program will start again at 2:30 p.m. The panelists are Associate Professor Dr. Iqbal Pramukti, Senior Assistant Professor Dr. Nurolaini Kifli, and Assistant Professor Dr. Redzuan Hakim Abdul Razak. Before we proceed, to all staff and students of the IUM, please fill in your attendance in morning session by scanning the form through this QR code. And for the evening session, another QR code will be available after the forum session. We may also share the link in the chat box after this. A warm message to from us, the organizer. Please stay tuned and follow the Planetiium social media, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram to get updated news regarding future programs or events that will be organized by Planetiium. Thank you again for your active participation, and thank you to our panels from University Malaysia Sabah, Sunway University, and Mahidol University. We are grateful for your time, expertise, and commitment to today's topic. Thank you very much. I am Suhaila Rusni, and I am looking forward to meeting you again in the future program. Have a nice day. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and happy Ramadan to those celebrating. Bye for now. Thank you.